Today we are going to build a twin screw Moxon vise. I've got the materials here and here is what we're building. So we're going to have obviously two screws, got them right here. We're going to have a slot in one of the holes and then one fixed hole for one of the screws. This will move back and forth probably 6 to 8 inches. I'm going to take a look at the material that I've got here and we'll decide exactly how long to make this. The nut will be recessed in the back and just be a sliding fit. Let's get this laid out and start the process of building it. This oak is from a project from several years ago that I wasn't thrilled with, the glue lines, and just never found another project to use it on. Well, today is the day it gets used. First thing to do is to square everything up and get that cut. I like to have these an identical length. So let me get these cut and we'll be right back. I may have to finish this cut on the bandsaw because I don't think the blade will go through this entirely, but let's give it a whirl. So now that we've got one end squared up, that's lined up about perfectly. That's my stop. I'm going to go finish cleaning this up on the bandsaw real quick. I needed about a 3/16 of an inch taken off. And there we have it. Squared up and ready to lay out. So we're back at the bench. We've got these cut to length, squared up. This is going to be the front chop of the vise. And I want to put a little bit of a decorative detail on it. And the way I typically will do that, it's a very classic looking front chop. It's right at about 1/4 inch. And now what I'm going to do with the layout is I'm going to grab a compass or a dividers. We got a set of dividers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mark. I've got this set here, this set here, and then I'm going to come in you want to start at the same place, so that's what this mark here is for. Alright, so now I'm going to come up 1/4 inch on either of these sides to match this. Make a mark. And that should be my starting point with the compass. Vise. I think that looks pretty good. So it is not 100% consistent between the front and the back, and that's fine. Really all we're trying to do is give it a little bit of a decorative reveal here. I'm going to pencil that line in so it's easier to see. We've got a consistent dimension here and here. This arc here is consistent with the starting point in the same spot, and this is actually the same as what this will be here. So what I'll do is I'll cut this probably on the bandsaw or with a handsaw, cut this the same way, and then I will cut this out on the bandsaw. Could also chisel it out, but that does take a lot longer, and the bandsaw is a good way to go with that. But I'm going to do that later, because now that I have this laid out, I know where that line for that profile is going to be, which means I can start all of the rest of the layout. So the profile starts here, and then this is completely flat. The screws, this is 2 1/4 diameter, and so I need a 2 1/4 hole, and then a 2 1/4 hole and a 2 1/4 hole cut out in between, so then I can slide that screw back and forth. The hub of the screw, I always make these to whatever dimension the stock that I have gives me. So we'll say it's 3 1/8, and this one's probably, I think, 3 1/16. So approximately the same. Visually, I don't think that'll matter too much. So if we've got a 2 1/4 hole, we need this bearing surface here completely on the flat on both sides. So that's 3 inches. So 3 9/16 in from here is the absolute minimum. I'm going to come in a little further because I think it'll look a little odd if it's directly on the edge. So let's go with, so 1 9/16 is right there. I'm marking the center line of the hole. And I think I want to do that. Let's just go with 2 1/4 inches from the end. So 2 1/4 inches, 2 1/4 inches. That gives me, I'm going to pull it out 10 inches to my mark, so I need to subtract 10 inches. It gives me 24 1/2, so 14 1/2. That'll give me a little over 12, which I think should be just fine. I may only make this, I may make this just a 3 or 4 inch flange here, or a cutout here for the moving part. But okay, so I've got the hole locations lined up here, and now we need to figure out what half of this is. It's should be about 2 5/8. So So that's 2 5/8. We'll double check it from the other side to make sure. Okay, so I was off by about a 32nd. Always double check from both sides. Okay. So here's my hole location there, and then I'm going to drill another hole here. Once I set that square, I only take it from the reference edge here, because if I'm not dead on with exact center, if I took it from the opposite side and not my reference side, then I would have issues where this one would be a little bit off. Now, does it matter all that much? For this application, no, but sometimes it does, so it's just best practice to always make sure you know what side is your reference side and take your measurements from there. So now I'm going to drill a 2 1/4 hole, a 2 1/4 hole, and a 2 1/4 hole. After that, here, I will use the actual drill bit that I used to drill these holes, and I will use that as a center punch for the holes here. This side with the movable jaw, this will get a 2 1/4 hole drilled in it. That'll allow for the screw to move back and forth, and then I will recess the back right here, getting rid of this knot probably. I'll recess the back here for the nut that moves. This will get drilled a smaller size, and I will actually thread this hole. So we're threading this hole, and then this, I will cut this down to an appropriate size to fit inside the back side of this so it can move back and forth. And that's already been threaded. I'm not going to show any of the threading portion. I might show a little bit of this, but I've already made the screws and the nut, so I'm not going to show any of that in this video. That'll be a later video, but I'll show you how to fit everything together. So I'm going to go drill these, and then I'll be back. So I've got these marked. This is my reference surface, nice and lined up. I'm taking the 2 1/4 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill through here with the 2 1/4 as well, just to be able to clean this up with the chisel real quick. But this gives me a better position, or I can transfer the marks better if it's just a hole rather than the slot. So there's that. Always, if you're using a Forstner bit in particular, always turn it at least 90 degrees, because the points on these are rarely absolutely perfect, and so you want to make sure that you've got a good mark. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to drill this right here, and then I'll just have this little section on both sides to chisel out straight. And that way, this will be able to move over all the way. Something I like doing just to make sure that things don't get lost. I like to expand my marks. That way, I have an easier time lining everything up on the drill press. Alright, so I've got these 3 holes drilled. I still need to drill the same thing here, but I'm just going to do this real quick. Just as an additional check while I'm at the drill press. I also need to straighten this up, so all I need to do here is straight line right here. And over. So these get chiseled straight down. Alright, so I've got these drilled and these drilled. This has been tapped for the wooden screws. Now I need to straighten these 2 out, and then this is the rear, and what we'll do is we'll make a recess here and trim this nut block to fit right in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a chisel and get these straightened up first, and then I will lay this out and we'll go from there. Alright, so I'm going to start from one side and then flip over and go from the other side. I've got a halfway decent size mortise chisel that I'm going to use for the bulk of it, and then I'll clean it up with a more delicate chisel at the end. Normally goes pretty quick. This is the one I'm worried about because I know that this one has some gnarly grain to it, so I'm worried about it blowing out or being a little bit tougher. And it is breaking out pretty bad here. So you can see right here where it's actually breaking out. So I may end up needing to use a rasp here to clean that up. I'm going to get the bulk of it out with the chisel still, and then I'll probably hit that with a rasp or a float. I've got the bulk of that cleaned out with the big chisel, or the thick chisel. Now let's pull out a 2-inch chisel with a little bit sharper blade on it. Alright, we're getting real close on that one. I would normally do this out of maple or cherry, or birch if I can get my hands on it. But I had this oak, and so I'm going to use it. I personally don't care for oak that much. Red oak is probably my least favorite wood to work with. If this gets it off my lumber rack and puts it to good use, then I won't complain too much about it. Alright, I'll have to clean that up a little bit, but we've got to do the recess here anyway. So let's get this one done. I'm going to start with the front. That way any breakout that might occur will be on the rear face of the jaw. Alright, so that's the bulk of it. And now we're going to pull out a rasp or a float and start cleaning that up. But I'm just going to check to see whether my dimensions are good. It's a nice tight fit. I might take a little bit more off of this real quick with the chisel. This is actually a body float, but it works really well for wood. It's got some curved teeth to it. I've been using these for a long time. I think that, yeah, this is a Heller, which I believe are a little harder to find nowadays. Eventually I need to either make some more or find a good woodworking float supplier. I think Lee Nielsen sells them, and they make some pretty darn good tools, so I may end up picking up one or two there. Yeah, that's getting better. We're pretty close. Let's see how close we are before I switch to something coarser. Okay, we're actually really close. Let me see, I might grab a coarser rasp just to knock that down quickly. I think the high spot is on the top on that one. Alrighty. And there we go. Doesn't really take much, but that works out nicely. Now we'll do the same with the rear jaw. The reason I have these up on these shims is I need to flatten my bench. I've developed a little bit of a dip right here and a hump right here. And so if I try and put something like, this size down, it'll rock. And so I need to actually flatten the bench top again. And there we go. Not much to it. A lot of people will say, well, you could have made a router jig or used a saw or something like that. A chisel and a sharp rasp or float are probably going to do the work just as fast as you can set something else up. If I were doing 5 or 10 of these at once, I'd set up a jig. It'd definitely be faster. So I'm doing the layout here. I went ahead and locked this together. And you can see here's where the profile will be, and then here's where the screw will be. It's looking pretty good as far as functionality is concerned. I'm going to trim this nut down, probably about here and here, and probably about here and here. And that way I can use the nut itself to do the layout, put it just like this, loosen it up just a touch, and then I can move it back and forth and actually mark exactly where it needs to go. And then I'll just use a chisel and chop out the mortise, or it's not a mortise, it's basically a big rabbet, or dado here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this on the bandsaw, and then I'll probably continue doing this tomorrow. Alright, before I cut this, I want to radius this. It'll make my life harder, but hey, it's a good exercise. So, because I still have the center point from the screw, I can just put that there. And there's my layout. Alright, so I've got this cut on the bandsaw. And now, I'm just going to flip this over and set this on some blocks. So now I can get this lined up. That's where it needs to be, right there. And then just move this over all the way. And there we go. So now we know exactly where to cut the mortise for this nut, and it'll be captured. I'll cut it a little bit bigger just to give it a little extra room, but that should be a pretty simple thing to do. I'm going to go ahead and set a square to the depth that I need, because we want to make sure that we get this nut cut at least flush with the back of this so it doesn't protrude. And then I think we're good. Alright, so we're back today. I'm going to pull this apart. I've got this laid out here. Slides back and forth. Still a little tight in the middle. I'll clean that up later. We now know exactly where the cutout for this nut is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and get this pulled apart and get that recess cut in. So I'm going to define this line here. Just defining the outline. And we should be able to get started. I think for the deeper stuff here, after I define all of this, I'm going to switch back to a larger 1-inch mortise chisel. I'll just speed things up a little bit. But because the angle on this isn't as steep as on the bevel chisels, I'm going to define everything first. This area here with this knot, we'll see how the grain works here, but that may be a little problematic, but we'll see. Got it established probably about a third to half of the way. So we're just gonna top. We're gonna slide it in here and see how that's doing. It's probably a little over a third of the way. And it doesn't have to go all the way back, but I do want it, you know, if there's a 1/4 inch sticking out, I'm fine with that. But I want it pretty decent. So now it's just, now that I've got this established, know everything's where it's supposed to be, now it's just some real fast chopping to get the rest of this out, and then I will probably pull out a router plane and just clean up so that I've got a halfway decent surface for the nut to slide on, because right now it catches a little bit and I'd rather have that ride nice and smoothly. So my battery died somewhere in there, so we're just going to continue on. So I removed the collar from my router plane, and I have one more pass to make. I think we'll be cleaned up. We've just got a little bit of rough chisel marks right down here. Riding pretty smoothly. I've got to clean the edges up a little bit, but I think move this over just a little bit. I'm not shooting for perfection down here. I just need it to have most of this cleaned up. Clean these edges just a little bit. Alright, that looks halfway decent right there. And now let's see. Top. And now we've got that sliding nicely and consistently. I'll probably do a little bit of cleanup here and here, but I'm not going to worry about it too much since this is the back side and this isn't a production piece. Let's see how it works. Alright, so now I've got it set up. That moves over. The nut in the back there Slides nicely. Okay, let's get a scrap piece and get it clamped in there and see how that works. So now, on a vise this length, this moving over probably isn't a huge deal. On the longer one that I'm planning, I think it would make a difference. Even a thick chop like this, if you've got something in the center here, you can actually bend that chop, and then you've got 2 points of contact rather than a single point of contact. That's nice, and that was just hand tight there. That's nice and tight. I'd probably want it a little bit tighter for sawing. So yeah. So now we've just got the cosmetic stuff, these edges. I may, for alignment, I normally have the front chop dropped a little bit lower. So I may add a piece to the bottom here, just so then you can tighten things up. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So if I add a piece here, and this is just for illustration, then it'll be a stop and you know exactly where to clamp your vise. So I will probably add maybe a 1/2 inch piece to the bottom of this chop, just for reference there. It'll make life easier. But I think that'll be the next video. I'll do these profiles on here. We'll get everything finished. I'll be easing all these corners. I haven't decided entirely whether I want to do a rear table for this. I don't think I will. I want to keep this compact so it'll fit underneath my bench. But this, I think, will handle most of what I do on a day-to-day basis.